Okay, let's unpack this incredible snapshot in time. August 11th, 2025. It wasn't just another Monday. It felt like a real collision of major forces, didn't it?
It really did.
A convergence.
Yeah.
From global power shifts, huge business deals, to pretty profound societal tremors right here at home.
Yeah.
It was a day that genuinely showed how interconnected everything is. You know, the ripple effects go way beyond the headlines.
Absolutely.
So for this deep dive, we've got a stack of key sources all pointing to this one really packed day. Our mission: to unpack the most important nuggets of knowledge, the insights from these events. We'll explore the immediate impacts, the underlying tensions, and the bigger questions they raise, giving you a full picture of why these moments matter. Think of it as your shortcut to getting up to speed on a day that was anything but ordinary. When you look at a day so dense with news, what immediately jumps out at you?
Well, it's the sheer range, isn't it? You've got these fundamental debates about federal power playing out domestically, right alongside incredibly complex global diplomacy, tech evolution happening sort of quietly in the background. It's like a microcosm of the biggest challenges and changes we're all grappling with.
Absolutely. And those domestic shifts are a great place to start. We saw some, well, pretty extraordinary moves impacting federal power, the economy, public safety. Take Washington, D.C., for instance, that federal move stepping into local policing. That's pretty unprecedented, right? What exactly happened there?
Yeah, it really was. On August 11th, President Trump announced the federalization of the Metropolitan Police Department, the MPD,
Okay.
and deployed about 800 National Guard members as well.
Wow.
What makes it so significant is DC's history. For decades, they've largely managed their own policing under home rule.
Since 73, right?
Exactly, since 1973. So even though the federal government has ultimate authority, direct federal control of the MPD like this, it's been virtually unheard of in modern times.
And the administration's justification was public safety.
They framed it as a public safety emergency, mentioned encampments, narcotics enforcement.
But the local reaction was quite different.
Very different. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser called it, I think the words were unsettling and unprecedented. And local leaders pushed back hard, saying city crime data was actually trending down from pandemic spikes.
So in their view, it wasn't justified.
No, they argued the data didn't support a federal takeover.
And the reaction nationally, pretty split, I imagine.
Instantly polarized. It really highlights that fundamental tension in American governance.
Between federal and local control.
Precisely. Congressional Republicans tended to applaud it as necessary action.
Okay.
Democrats, civil liberties groups, they decried it, called it an abuse of executive power.
So this sets quite a precedent then.
A potent one. It raises huge legal and political questions about home rule, civil liberties, and just how far federal involvement in city policing can go.
It really does. Okay, moving from the streets of D.C. to the numbers that drive our economy. Another big story involving federal power, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's an agency we usually think of as, well, completely apolitical.
That's right. And on the same day, August 11th, President Trump nominated E.J. Antoni to lead the BLS. He's the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, and he'd been critical of recent BLS practices.
Right, and this came after the previous commissioner, Erica McIntyre, was fired just 10 days before.
It did. That followed a weak jobs report, some downward revisions.
And days of the president claiming the numbers were rigged.
Exactly. Which makes the timing and the choice of nominee particularly sensitive.
And just for context, the BLS is,
Yeah.
it's crucial, right?
No.
Nonpartisan.
Absolutely crucial. It publishes the key jobs reports, inflation data that businesses, markets, the Federal Reserve, everyone relies on.
And its leaders are usually shielded from political pressure.
Typically, yes. To ensure that data integrity, that's paramount.
So this nomination, what are the implications?
Well, it immediately raises concerns about politicizing official data. That's the big red flag for economists and statisticians.
Threatening independence.
Right. Threatening research independence. And, regardless of Mr. Antoni's intentions, the perception matters. Any hint of politicization could erode public trust in these vital statistics.
A really important point.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift focus now. Staying domestic, but moving to a more local and tragic impact. An event in Austin, Texas that reminded everyone about ongoing public safety challenges.
Yes, sadly. On August 11th, a gunman opened fire in a North Austin Target parking lot.
Terrible.
Killed 2 adults and a child. He then fled, hijacked vehicles, but was eventually arrested.
And this kind of event, It feels like part of a deeply disturbing trend, doesn't it? Shootings in public retail spaces.
It does. It tragically continues that pattern, even with stores trying to update security and police focusing on faster response times.
What was the reaction in Texas?
Immediate condemnation from city leaders, of course,
Hmm.
and it instantly reignited those really difficult debates.
Gun policy.
Gun policy, mental health services, securing these kinds of open, busy retail areas, all of it came rushing back to the forefront. It's a stark reminder of how recurring these crises are,
Hmm.
and it forces communities, yet again, to reevaluate everything around prevention and response in places people assume are safe.
Yeah. Okay, let's pivot now. Leaving domestic shifts behind, it's clear August 11th was just as consequential on the global stage. Diplomacy, conflict. Starting with President Trump's proposed summit with Vladimir Putin, that raised eyebrows immediately, especially about Ukraine.
It certainly did. On that day, August 11th, the president confirmed a planned meeting with Putin in Alaska for August 15th.
Just a few days later.
Right. And he suggested he'd quickly see if a deal was possible, even mentioning things like land swapping.
Land swapping, wow. And the key concern.
The biggest one.
Hmm.
Trump stated explicitly that Ukrainian President Zelensky would not be present at these initial talks.
Okay, that's huge.
It immediately sparked fears. European allies, Kyiv, they were worried Ukraine's interests would be completely sidelined.
And that potential concessions, especially territorial ones, could undermine stability.
Exactly. Remember, Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022 completely reshaped European security.
Of course.
And Moscow keeps floating these ceasefire ideas that Kyiv and allies see as just attempts to legitimize, to lock in their territorial gains.
So the reaction from Europe.
Complex. European leaders were prepping for their own calls with Trump and Zelensky. They urged Washington to maintain unity with Kyiv and the EU.
Trying to keep everyone on the same page.
Yes. There was some hope, maybe, that U.S. clout could unlock real talks, but much more fear about pressuring Kyiv into bad concessions.
Or rewarding aggression.
Or rewarding aggression. That's the fundamental principle at stake. The idea of a major power mediating without a key party present. While maybe seen as pragmatic by some, it raises massive questions about international law. You just don't reward aggression.
A very tense diplomatic situation. Meanwhile, the conflict in Gaza also saw a deeply troubling development involving journalists.
Yes, tragically. Also on August 11th, there were reports of multiple deadly strikes across Gaza, including one that killed Anas al-Sharif, a well-known Al Jazeera correspondent, and other media workers. They were intense near Shifa Hospital.
Oh no.
Local authorities and media outlets reported the deaths. It comes amidst, well, an incredibly deadly period for journalists covering the war in Gaza.
The risks they face are enormous.
Immense. Press freedom groups have been warning constantly about the dangers in besieged areas with airstrikes, ground operations, and Palestinian journalists are absolutely crucial sources of information, especially with restrictions on foreign media access.
What was Israel's response to this specific incident?
Israel alleged militants were among those targeted. They claimed al-Sharif was a Hamas operative.
A claim Al Jazeera denied.
Vehemently denied it, and hospitals in Gaza reported dozens of deaths overall that day.
The international reaction?
Swift global condemnation. Press freedom organizations, the UN, numerous governments, all calling for investigations. Israel's assertions were met with a lot of skepticism from rights groups. It just underscored these ongoing bitter disputes.
Disputes over targeting, proportionality.
Exactly. And the protection of journalists in conflict zones, it starkly highlights the dangers they face and the crucial need for accountability and independent information. The clash of narratives is just intense.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to economic relations, specifically U.S.-China. We saw some interesting, perhaps nuanced moves on August 11th. First, tariffs.
Right. On that day, President Trump signed an executive order extending a 90-day tariff truce with China for another 90 days.
Okay, so kicking the can down the road, essentially.
Basically averting a massive spike in tariffs. Analysts were calling the threatened rates a de facto trade embargo, so this avoided that immediate cliff.
How did businesses react?
Relief, mostly. Business groups called it breathing room, but they also stressed the continued uncertainty. Nobody knows what happens after the next 90 days.
And China's reaction?
Beijing signaled some conditional openness to talks. U.S. officials framed the extension more as leverage for a bigger deal down the line.
Okay, so the tariff fight continues, but paused. Then there was this really intriguing development on AI chips.
Yeah, this was fascinating. Reports surfaced and markets started absorbing them that the administration might allow next-gen AI chip sales to China.
But with a catch.
A big catch. Vendors like NVIDIA and AMD would reportedly have to agree to send 15% of the related revenue directly to the U.S. Treasury
15%.
and submit to very strict licensing. So controls on who they sell to, how the tech is used, major national security oversight baked in.
And this is all happening after years of tightening export controls.
Exactly. Since 2022, Washington's been trying to slow China's military-relevant AI progress by restricting advanced semiconductor exports.
While trying not to totally cut off U.S. chip makers from a huge market.
It's a balancing act. Companies had created these China-compliant chips, but the rules keep evolving.
So how are economists seeing this revenue-sharing idea?
They're calling it a novel mix. Part national security guardrail, part de facto taxation.
So pros and cons.
Supporters say it keeps a U.S. commercial foothold, gives Washington visibility into the tech flow. Critics worry about capability leakage anyway, and the precedent it sets.
Both moves, the tariffs and the chips. It shows a really complex strategy with China, doesn't it?
Definitely. Trying to manage economic interests and national security concerns simultaneously. Engagement and control.
And the big question is, how sustainable is that balance long term?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, really.
Okay, let's move geographically. A significant diplomatic shift occurred down under. Australia recognizing Palestine.
Yes. Also on August 11th, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced Australia would formally recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September.
That's a major step for a Western ally.
It is. He cited humanitarian concerns in Gaza, but also laid out conditions.
Conditions like?
Assurances from the Palestinian Authority, specifically excluding Hamas and requiring demilitarization and elections.
So not unconditional recognition.
No. But still, very few major Western allies have taken this step, though concerns over Gaza and shifting international sentiment are putting pressure on governments.
So Australia joins others who've made similar recent moves.
It aligns them with announcements from countries like France, Britain, Canada. It definitely adds diplomatic pressure on Israel.
And leaves the U.S. where?
Increasingly isolated on close allies and its very firm support for Israel's position on this. It's more than symbolic. It's a clear diplomatic signal that could really shift alliances and maybe influence future peace efforts, however distant they seem. It points to an evolving consensus.
A potentially significant shift indeed. Okay, further south now to Ecuador. A chilling incident highlighting escalating gang violence.
Yes, a really brutal attack. In the early hours of August 11th, gunmen opened fire outside a nightclub in Santa Lucia, killed at least 8 people, including the club's owner and also the brother of the town's mayor.
Just horrific. And this is part of a wider crisis in Ecuador.
A deepening one, unfortunately. Traffickers are increasingly exploiting ports, battling for territory. It's pushed homicide rates to historic highs.
Prompting states of emergency.
Repeatedly. But this massacre really underscored the limits of the current security measures. It shows the cross-border nature of the drug trade.
So military deployments alone aren't enough.
Analysts are warning, no. Not without deeper reforms, policing, prisons, serious anti-corruption efforts. Military action is a band-aid on a much deeper wound.
It's a stark example of how local violence points to huge systemic problems.
Absolutely. The profound challenge of transnational organized crime.
Okay, let's bring our focus back to the U.S. The West dealing with significant wildfires again. Colorado, specifically.
Right. On August 11th, you had over 1,000 firefighters battling major fires in Colorado. The Lee Fire, among the largest in state history.
And the Elk Fire, too.
And the Elk Fire, yes. Leading to evacuations, road closures, the usual, sadly increasingly usual disruption.
And this is linked to broader climate trends.
Directly. Western fire seasons are getting longer. Conditions are hotter, drier. It increases the risk of these really fast-moving, intense burns. And the smoke waves.
Which travel huge distances.
Exactly. Crews on the ground reported really difficult terrain, shifting winds, stretched resources.
And air quality impact.
Significant. Air quality alerts were extending far beyond the fire lines as the smoke traveled east.
So public health warnings were widespread.
Yes, especially for vulnerable groups. Officials warning people to limit outdoor activity, use air filtration if possible. It just keeps raising that crucial question about our long-term preparedness. How do we adapt to these increasingly intense, widespread disasters?
They're not just local anymore.
No, they're regional health crises impacting people hundreds of miles away.
Meanwhile, over in the Atlantic, the hurricane season was kicking off.
Yes. Tropical Storm Erin formed on August 11th out in the north-central Atlantic, and the forecast was for it to strengthen, potentially becoming the season's first hurricane, maybe even a Category 3 by the weekend.
Wow. And the context here is warm ocean waters.
Very warm sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic. That's been a major concern. It means even marginal systems can intensify really rapidly.
And climate change makes storms more unpredictable.
More unpredictable, potentially more intense. That's the scientific consensus.
Was Aaron an immediate threat to land?
As of the 11th, its predicted path put Bermuda and maybe the U.S. East Coast on alert, but no direct landfall was forecast then. More of a risk to shipping, maybe Atlantic Canada later.
But still a reminder.
Absolutely. Emergency managers used it immediately, reminding coastal residents, update your plans, check your supplies, and meteorologists urged everyone to keep monitoring updates. Small shifts in track can make a huge difference for coastal impacts.
It's interesting how every storm now is framed within that climate change context.
It's unavoidable. Aaron instantly sparked those conversations again. Climate resilience, insurance issues, disaster prep in hurricane zones.
Right. Okay, back to the industrial front. A very serious incident in Pennsylvania. A deadly explosion at a steel plant.
Yes, at U.S. Steel's Clairton Coke Works near Pittsburgh. On August 11th, there was an explosion, then subsequent blasts. Tragically, 2 people were killed and at least 10 injured. Emergency crews were searching rubble, shutting down affected parts of the plant.
And this plant, it has a history.
Coking plants in general often have safety and air quality concerns. Clairton specifically, yes, it has faced lawsuits, fines, repairs after previous accidents, and pollution releases.
What about immediate air quality concerns from this explosion?
Authorities said later that day that air monitors didn't detect pollutants above federal thresholds.
But the reaction from community and environmental groups?
U.S. Steel, which is now owned by Nippon Steel, vowed a full investigation. But environmental groups immediately called for independent reviews. They cited the plant's history, the health risks for residents in the Mon Valley. It spurred discussions about industrial safety, oversight, workers' rights.
It really highlights those persistent challenges, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. Balancing economic output with worker and community well-being, especially in older industrial areas with known risks. How do we ensure safety standards are truly robust?
A critical question.
Okay.
Okay, let's pivot now to our final section. Tech, business, and societal evolution. And starting with a huge one in media and entertainment, Paramount landing the UFC rights. That's a game changer.
A massive deal. Also on August 11th, the news broke. The newly merged Skydance-owned Paramount struck a 7-year deal with TKO Group.
For how much?
Reported $7.7 billion to become the exclusive U.S. home for the UFC starting next year.
Exclusive home, so moving off ESPN Plus pay.
Exactly. Numbered cards, fight nights, they shift to Paramount Plus fates. Some events will be simulcast on CBS too.
And live sports are king in streaming right now.
Premium fuel for growth. The competition is intense. UFC's pay-per-view model on ESPN Plus has been a huge revenue driver for Disney.
So this really shakes things up.
Tremendously. Analysts said it vaults Paramount into the top tier of sports streamers. It jolts the rights market by ending that PCV model for U.S. fans on ESPN Plus.
TKO shares jumped, I bet.
They did. Analysts called it a big swing for scale and stickiness in a super crowded streaming landscape. It fundamentally changes how millions consume that sport.
It really shows the high stakes in the streaming wars, securing that kind of major tentpole content.
It's all about driving subscriptions now, and this is a huge play by Paramount.
Okay, shifting from the future of streaming to the end of an internet era. A moment of digital nostalgia, perhaps. AOL shutting down dial-up.
Yeah, that news also dropped on August 11th. AOL announced they'll discontinue dial-up service on September 30th, 2025, retiring the software too.
Wow. End of an era is right. You've got mail.
Exactly. AOL brought millions online in the 90s. The chat rooms, those ubiquitous trial CDs.
I definitely had a stack of those.
Didn't we all? As broadband took over in the 2000s, dial-up dwindled, obviously, but it just lingered.
Especially in some rural areas.
Yeah, or just among a few nostalgic users. But it hung on for a surprisingly long time.
So this marks
What?
a cultural milestone.
Definitely a cultural milestone. The end of that defining on-ramp to the early web for so many people.
But it also highlights something else, right?
It does. It shows how legacy connectivity can persist. And consumer advocates jumped on it, saying it underscores the need to finally close that rural broadband gap for good.
So, nostalgia, but also a reminder about digital equity.
Precisely. It makes you reflect on how fast tech moves, but also that basic connectivity is still a real issue for some. Access to modern infrastructure isn't universal.
Very true. Okay, another important area, Social Security. Some adjustments announced.
Yes, the Social Security Administration updated benefits. There was a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, or CLA.
So average monthly payments will go up slightly?
Correct. They also added some new conditions to their compassionate allowances list, which fast-tracks decisions for severe disabilities.
And the goal was?
The SSA said it was to better serve beneficiaries, address rising living costs, and they're also trying to streamline online services.
How is this received?
Generally welcomed as positive, especially the COLA and the expanded compassionate allowances. Advocacy groups praise that.
But there are always background concerns.
Always. Economists pointed to the long-term solvency issues the program faces. This brings those ongoing reform debates back into focus.
So helpful adjustments now, but bigger questions remain.
Exactly. It's that constant balancing act, adapting the safety net to current needs while grappling with the long-term fiscal challenges.
Right. Now, a development at the intersection of public health, science, and politics. This involved the HHS secretary and a medical journal.
Yes, quite a clash. On August 11th, a leading medical journal publicly refused a request from Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
A request to do what?
To retract a recently published vaccine study. The journal stated very clearly the paper met their editorial standards.
And Kennedy, of course, has a long history of vaccine skepticism.
He does, and he's faced scrutiny since becoming HHS secretary. This is happening against a backdrop of years of vaccine misinformation complicating public health efforts.
So the journal defended its process.
Strongly defended the peer review process, and the scientific and medical communities largely backed the journal's stance.
Warning about political interference.
Yes, warning that these kinds of political interventions threaten research independence. On the other side, supporters of the secretary argued the study's policy relevance justified an exceptional review.
It really spotlights the tension there, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The fraught politics around pandemic-era science. It raises really important questions about the boundaries. Where does political office end and the independence of scientific research and peer review begin?
A critical question for scientific integrity. Okay, finally, beyond all the policy and conflict headlines, August 11th also saw some quieter but potentially profound scientific and tech breakthroughs.
That's right. Often these things develop away from the main news cycle but have huge long-term impact. The National Science Foundation, for example, announced new initiatives in quantum technology.
Which is key for national security.
Hugely relevant. Also, updates on AI safety policy, even developments in using autonomous artillery in the military.
And some big discovery.
Really big. Astronomers announced the discovery of an ultra-massive black hole, potentially the largest one known. Just imagine that.
Mind-boggling.
And maybe even more paradigm-shifting. MIT researchers published evidence suggesting planets without water might still host life.
Without water? How?
Using something called ionic liquids instead. It completely reshapes astrobiological thinking, widens the search for life out there enormously.
Wow, that's incredible.
It just shows how these scientific advances, often developed quietly, can have profound implications for our understanding of the universe, our technology, national security.
Those invisible threads connecting fundamental research to everything else.
Exactly.
So we've covered a truly remarkable single day, August 11th, federal power, global diplomacy, climate, disaster, technology, society. It's clear, isn't it? Even one day can be a microcosm of the world's biggest issues.
Yeah.
It shows how deeply interconnected everything is.
You've really just taken that deep dive with us into some of the most significant shifts and tensions playing out right now. By unpacking these moments from just one day, you've got more than just the key details. You've got the broader context. You can see how these seemingly separate events actually link up and influence each other.
And as we think about all these developments packed into 24 hours, from those huge geopolitical plays down to something like the quiet end of dial-up internet, it really raises a big question for all of us, doesn't it? In a world where change feels constant, often incredibly rapid, how do we best prepare ourselves, our societies, for the challenges and the opportunities that emerge from all these interconnected shifts? How can you apply this kind of deep, contextual understanding to the flood of information you encounter every single day?